So welcome. This is meeting 2 for the ECE EDU Apprenticeship Regional Joint Venture for the Bay Area region. Introducing today, we have myself from City College as the RJV lead. And we have Monique Pascual, who is our Director of Apprenticeship. Monique, if you want to wave, you'll be hearing from her later. She's going to talk to you kind of about, this is a nuts and bolts discussion presentation, and then we will have a discussion, time for questions. And she's going to talk to you about her role and what the college's roles are. And then we have Adele Burns. Adele, would you like to wave? She's our apprenticeship director for the San Francisco Bay region, and she's going to be talking to you about nuts and bolts as well. We're calling this Apprenticeship 101, but realize that apprenticeship in our sector, ECE and EDU, is fairly new, actually throughout the country, new in the state, new in the country, and most certainly in the region. Nuts and bolts when it comes to apprenticeship doesn't always include ECE and EDU. So as I said, this is our just a brief description of our agenda. We're going to have a little bit of time to talk about the High Road Training Partnership RFP, which just came out, and just we want to gauge your interest. We've already asked you about who's in the room, and I just want to introduce our team. I do see Tina from Skyline. So Tina, you're one of our newer models, and Adele, you can refer to Tina since she's here, we'll embarrass her. And when Berkeley City comes on, someone will come on from Berkeley, we'll embarrass them as well. Just a review, some of you were not on at the last call, so I'm going to just show this slide one more time and then we'll pull it off. All of our regional joint venture information, both our newsletters, our recordings, everything is posted on at these links, and you will get a copy of this PowerPoint if you're here. I have this being recorded, so we will know who's here. And you'll also have access to both the PowerPoint and the recordings at these websites. So under the BACCC Teacher Preparation Pipeline page, you'll see everything. And then I send out emails. So just that you can find this. I also plug for Adele's Bay Area College Apprenticeship Connection. She's on this call, so you can just email her, tell her in the chat that you want to join. And she also is concurrently covering lots of apprenticeship information. So without further ado, I'm going to have them, both Adele and Monique, go through apprenticeship nuts and bolts. I'm going to stop sharing, and then we're going to come back and have both questions and a discussion. I also want to share a bit of news with you toward the end around both some, I guess it's a update on some of the childcare funding, especially around transitional childcare. I know some of you are interested around the TK expansion money. I want to share a little bit about where the governor's budget is, what it's looking like right now that it's June, and how TK is probably going to be moving forward, and we can kind of talk about that as it's related also to childcare for TK, as well as all the childcare expansion and the federal childcare expansion. So it's either feast or famine in our sector. So I'm going to stop sharing. I think Adele, you're going to go first. And welcome, Adele Burns.
Hello, folks. Pleasure to be here. So as Kathleen mentioned, I will be covering sort of a high-level overview of apprenticeship, specifically in the context of, our education system and in community colleges. And then Monique, so my role, for those of you who don't know me, I am the Regional Director of Apprenticeship for the Bay Area Community College Consortium. So that geography covers everything from up in sort of wine country in the north, the sort of Napa-Sonoma region, all the way south to Monterey Peninsula, and then over kind of to Livermore. So that's the sort of geographic zone of my work, and I'm working across apprenticeships and trying to just expand them into many sectors. Obviously, they are traditionally utilized in the building and trades building and fire trades sectors, and I'm working to expand them to any and every other sector. So I am here to be a resource to you all as you're trying to set up programs. So what I'm going to talk about is just to give a very introductory level to what is apprenticeship, and just do some definition of terms that I hope is helpful to you as you are diving into this world. And then I will hand it to Monique, who is a real practitioner in this at CCSF and runs lots of programs. And she'll talk a bit more sort of zoomed into that experience of running programs. I will attempt to look at the chat for questions. I may or may not be able to multitask that much, but like Kathleen said, we will have time for questions after Monique and I present. So the way to think about apprenticeship is that it is decidedly on this like work-based learning continuum. And I think it's helpful to remember that it is a continuum, right? Like when we're talking to employers, there's a lot of different ways that employers can partner with our educational systems to set up work-based learning experiences, right? Everything from career fairs and being a guest speaker, doing tours of job sites, job shadowing. And I would say that pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship are sort of in the more involved end of the spectrum. And the reason I think it's also helpful to think about this spectrum is because as you think about developing programs, sometimes sort of like taking some early relationships you have with the employers and thinking about how you can sort of bring them along in this relationship building to set up potentially an apprenticeship program. So fundamentally, what an apprenticeship program is it's a job. That's really what it is. It's a structured program such that somebody is working and also taking classes. So it's the structured education and on-the-job training program. And the two core requirements of apprenticeship is that it typically has to be around 2,000 hours. There's a little bit of flexibility in here that I'll get to in a moment, but typically it's about 2,000 hours, which works out to be about a year on the job, but that 2,000 can actually be stretched out over a longer period of time. So it's just 2,000 for the life of the apprenticeship. And that is complemented by 144 hours of classroom-based instruction. So you'll sometimes hear this acronym RSI in the apprenticeship world, and that stands for Related and Supplemental Instruction, which is really just referring to the classroom-based instruction. So to be an apprenticeship program, you have to have those 144 hours of RSI. But at the end of the day, an apprenticeship, like it is a job, it is a full-time paid employee of the sponsoring organization. So we're not talking about unpaid internships or, unpaid practicums. This is a paid job where they're also studying. So this is really the core frame of what it is. So looking at the supplemental instruction part of it, i.e. the classroom-based instruction, typically when you design the apprenticeship program, you're bringing multiple folks to the table to say like, okay, so, bring the employer to the table, bring the college or the educational entity to the table and say, okay, how are we going to design this program to meet the needs of this employment, right? So it can be curriculum specifically tailored to meet employer needs. I think it's easier to get things off the ground when you're launching programs that leverage existing coursework, but which I believe is very possible, especially in this education space. But the idea is to, instill the technical understanding of a job through coursework and then immediately be putting it into practice in an apprenticeship on the job, right? Depends how you set it up, but classes can definitely count towards a college degree, towards an AA degree, towards a certificate. It depends on how you design the program. But the point is that the RSI is the learn through classroom-based instruction. And then the on-the-job training component, a key component of designing an apprenticeship is what's called a work process, which is essentially a job description, but a little bit more detailed. It's saying what is the apprentice going to learn on the job? And that's complemented by the learning plan, right? So those two components are really the core components of designing an apprenticeship. And the expectation is certainly that there is a mentor on the job who is leading that on the job learning and supporting the apprentice in learning on the job. And another key requirement of an apprenticeship is that there does need to be an articulated skills progression, which is really sort of that work process that's associated with at least one wage increase. So there can be multiple steps of wage increase, but there has to be at least one step of wage increase that happens over the course of the apprenticeship. And an apprentice typically should be making no less than maybe 50% of what an experienced person holding that job is making. So in the apprenticeship space, this is also often called a journey person. And this is just like the role for which an apprentice is training for, right? Now, the floor is still minimum wage. So you can't pay less, you can't pay an apprentice less than minimum wage. So that's still the floor. And then the expectation is that with those wage progressions, they are they're finishing their apprenticeship making roughly 90% of what that journey person is making in the role. Okay, so these are really the core components of what makes an apprenticeship. And there are really sort of two core different types of apprenticeship programs that you can design. You can design a time-based program, which is really kind of the traditional method. It's how most folks think about apprenticeship, is with the 2,000 hours of on the job and the 144 hours of classroom-based instruction. But this is really like the progression through the apprenticeship in that case is measured by time on the job. Another type of apprenticeship that can be designed is a competency-based program. And in this, the apprentice is measured not by the time on the job, but by their demonstrated abilities on the job and their competencies. So this is, if you're going to design a program like this, it's nice if there can be like a third-party exam or certification that's validating that competency. I will say that the competency framework has existed for a while on the sort of federal level, but specifically in the state of California, it's a little bit more recent. And so it's they're a little more nervous about just a competency-based program where there's no third-party certification. So if you really want to do a competency-based program, that's cool, you can. But if you can build it with those third-party exams, it's going to go better. And then, of course, there's a hybrid program, which is sort of a combination of time and competency-based. So these are the different program types. And it's nice to have these different program types because it gives us, as those designing the program, a little bit more flexibility. I think it's helpful to kind of compare this to a typical internship. I think a lot of times you'll hear people sort of just throw around the terms internship and apprenticeship as interchangeable, and they're really very different. I would say sort of the point of an internship is to expose a young person to an industry, whereas the point of registered apprenticeship is really to cultivate a skilled talent pipeline. And the way that this comes out differently is partly in the duration. So an internship is usually anywhere from sort of 6 to 20 weeks. Maybe it's associated with an educational institution. It never culminates in anything that's like a portable certificate or anything like that, right? It just goes on the resume, which is valuable, but it goes on the resume. And it's usually unpaid. It's often, too often, unpaid. But sometimes it's paid maybe with a stipend, right? So no benefits. There's never any benefits with an internship, right? And certainly not much college credit, although sometimes there can be. Whereas an apprenticeship, in comparison, it's a bigger investment by everybody at the table, right? It's a more of an investment in the talent, in that it's anywhere from 6 months long to maybe even 6 years long. I think that's the outlier, but there are certainly some apprenticeship programs that are 6 years long. I would say the average program is usually around 1 to 2 years long. And it is registered with the state, so it does culminate in a portable, nationally state recognized certificate that that you can, that becomes like a degree, right? It's a full-time paid job, right? So as I talked about, they're making anywhere from 50 to 90% of what a journey person is making, no less than minimum wage, right? Minimum wage is still the floor. And hopefully they also get included in the benefits program that's being offered by the employers. Again, that's all sort of negotiable in the design, but is often a component of an apprenticeship. And if designed in collaboration with a community college, it actually gets them college credit. And again, it depends a little bit on the design of the program, but you can get college credit not just for the classes that you take associated with the apprenticeship, but also some amount of work experience can be built into the program so that they're getting credit for that on-the-job learning that they, of course, are doing. So this is a little bit of the comparison between the two, and hopefully you can see just how different they fundamentally are. So Kathleen mentioned this a little bit. I think Randy spoke to this a little bit last time, but I do just want to call out that there are sort of 3 groups in the Bay Area that are pioneering already on this front, and I know some of them are on this call. So Berkeley City College is one group that was a very early mover in this space. The occupation that they have is called Early Educator Apprentice. And they did a partnership with Cadango, YMCA, Castlemont High School, and also very importantly with ECEPS, who we heard from in our last meeting, as the intermediary partner that really helped them navigate a lot of the details of setting up the program. I'm sure we're going to hear more from them in this overall RJV learning series. Of course, City College of San Francisco, who we'll hear from Monique more momentarily, and they are in the process right now of launching the Early Education Instructional Aid is the name of the occupation there, and they are working with United Educators of San Francisco, so that San Francisco Teachers Union, right? And then a even more nascent program, which is in the process of getting organized and launched, is with the San Mateo Community College District, which I think is a really interesting model in that it's this partnership with the Child Development Center, the Child Development Laboratory Center, and they are also working with ECEPS as an intermediary partner. So these are just some initial models that we are absolutely going to learn a whole lot more about. But I just wanted to name these because it's always helpful to learn from those early movers. And I think that's a lot of what this RJV is about. I did just want to do a quick definition of terms on what is pre-apprenticeship, since I know there's lots of talk about pre-apprenticeships also. So a pre-apprenticeship is it's really a formal training program that is preparing someone to enter into an apprenticeship program. And there is no requirement around employer partnerships, around on-the-job learning. Like, it could be just formal training. There could be some amount of work experience or like on-the-job exposure that happens in a pre-apprenticeship program, but it's not a requirement. The only requirement of a pre-apprenticeship program is that it have a formal link, like an MOU, with a registered apprenticeship program. And essentially it's creating that agreement where the apprenticeship program is saying, yes, this pre-apprenticeship program prepares folks for my apprenticeship program. And that's the only actual requirement of a pre-apprenticeship program to be registered in the state of California. I will just name that technically, federally, they do not recognize pre-apprenticeship program. That's just to say that they don't like register pre-apprenticeship programs. There are often funding opportunities for pre-apprenticeship program, both at the state level and the federal level. But as of right now, pre-apprenticeship is not a federally recognized thing, but it is recognized specifically in the state of California. There are California Apprenticeship Initiative grants that are due to come out, hopefully in around August, we'll see, that specifically are for pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship programs. So to be considered a pre-apprenticeship program, you would have to have that formal MOU link. And then I also wanted to define youth apprenticeship, which is another term you might have heard. So a youth apprenticeship is a very nascent concept, to be totally honest. And I have gotten about 3 different definitions from apprenticeship experts nationally on what is youth apprenticeship. So I just want to name, you might hear some variation in different contexts on this. So youth apprenticeship is really everything that I described about apprenticeship. It's that, except that it's specifically for folks in the 16 to 24-year-old range. And specifically, it should be a program that starts in high school. That's really what I think is the defining aspect of it, that it starts in high school. And so it typically uses dual registration. Therefore, it's often in collaboration with a community college. But everything I said about apprenticeship applies to youth apprenticeship. Like that employer partnership is still key. Like this is not a training program, meaning like the pre-apprenticeship is just a training program, but youth apprenticeship is everything that I described about apprenticeship, but just specifically for a younger audience. And right now, the average age of an apprentice in California is 29, which is like, it just speaks volumes to how much 16 and 17-year-olds are unaware of apprenticeship as a pathway that they could even explore. And so I think that there's a lot of awareness building that needs to be done about apprenticeship, but I also think there's some really cool opportunities to develop youth apprenticeships to help folks like see a pathway that is maybe not necessarily just I'm going to go to college pathway, but is a pathway that's like an earn and learn pathway into a career and into, potentially also into an education. So that's my definition of terms. So with that, I will stop sharing and hand it over to Monique.
Okay, and before Monique comes on, I want to do a couple of sector clarifications around some of the semantics. So I think what makes our sector even more complicated is that we have words like practicum, supervised field work. Some of these are actually in code. They're part of the licensing and permitting process. And then we have now apprenticeship, we have work experience. So we have lots of ways to get our students real world experience, but they're all very different. So I think, Adele, when you were pointing out some of the differences, it's even more complicated in our field because we always have these vocabulary issues that make us just so complicated. We're not sure what kind of structure of getting students with children are we talking about? So
Cool.
just want to, yeah, and we could talk about that more. So I'd like to introduce Monique, who is at City College of San Francisco, but she's actually in the career technical ed area, working specifically with apprenticeship. And so she's going to give you an overview of some of the college responsibilities related to managing an apprenticeship. So Monique.
I'll go ahead and share it, Kathy.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Awesome. Can you see that?
Yep.
No?
Perfect.
Can?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me just move so that you guys don't. Can you still see it or no?
No, now it's way too big.
Okay.
Do it before. That's fine.
Okay. I'm just going to move my head. Sorry about that. I'm using 2 laptops. So hi, I'm Monique Pascual. I'm the Director of Apprenticeship and Instructional Service Agreements at City College of San Francisco. And just a little bit of background about me. So I've been at the college for almost 4 years. And prior to joining City College, I was at the Office of Economic and Workforce Development and for 10 years. And I did a lot of workforce training programs. And so I will take a deeper dive into what it means to really set up an apprenticeship at a community college. But I'm also, very passionate about workforce development and creating equal access. So I just want to give you all that background. So just a couple of our apprenticeship programs that we have at City College. Our Gardner Apprenticeship is a partnership with the City and County of San Francisco. It's about a 3-semester, maybe 4-semester, we'll say 4-semester program. So that's 2 years. Students are taking 1 class per semester. And students, our apprentices, are working at the city's rec and park department, cleaning up or gardening our parts, I shouldn't say that. And then our plumbing and plastering programs are more of our traditional construction apprenticeship programs. Probably some of you who think of apprenticeship, these are the programs that you're thinking about. And those are in partnership with our local union program sponsors. And so we provide the educational piece. And then I think Adele already mentioned this, is our early childhood development. We're so excited. I feel like, Kathy, we had been talking about this, and you probably been talking about this way before me, but it feels like it's been like years in the making. So we are so excited to be working with Unified and our students, and Tracy Burt, who I don't think is on this call, has just been doing some amazing work in getting students ready to start our apprenticeship. So I cannot wait that has just launched. And then our cybersecurity apprenticeship, which is fairly new, maybe about 2.5, 3 years. I guess that doesn't make it sound new when I say it like that. But again, thinking about apprenticeships in non-traditional sectors, so IT, which is, there's just so much opportunity for students in IT, especially when you think about the wages that they can earn. And so this one is unique, very similar to our early childhood development apprenticeship, because we are the lead, right? And so that means, we're doing a little bit more of the heavy lifting, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then our automotive pre-apprenticeship program. So Adele talked about pre-apprenticeship, and I don't want to, confuse anyone, but that's basically preparing our students who are interested in being automotive mechanics and working for the city and county of San Francisco. We have a great partnership with MTA. Because of COVID, we've had to kind of put that program on hold, because obviously, as you can imagine, as a mechanic, you can't be a mechanic from home, right, and work on the city's fleet. So more to come, hopefully, on that one. So I'll talk a little bit about my role in terms of apprenticeship. Really, and I could tell you in an ideal world, prior to COVID, I had a team that I worked with, and I really, kind of manage and oversee all the apprenticeship programs, right, in terms of, partnerships. There's some administrative reporting that I do, but, coordinating with faculty, right, on the curriculum. I'm not the curriculum expert. As Kathy and Tracy can tell you, I've been learning so much about early childhood, and probably Randy could chime in too. But I really rely on faculty to kind of help me understand, so that we can really build this apprenticeship around, the certificates and the classroom instruction that's put in place. And so that is a heavy piece, or huge piece of what I kind of do. And then we have to make sure that students or apprentices who are taking these classes, we want to track their hours, right? Track their attendance. As Adele mentioned, the related supplemental instruction, which is just classroom hours. We want to make sure that they're in the class, they're completing those hours, because they have to, because we register it, and it can't be this, well, they didn't come. It really is a little bit more, I don't want to say serious, but, the Division of Apprenticeship folks would probably call me up and say, what's going on, right? So that's really important. And then I do a lot of work with our admissions and records team. I love them. Hey, before COVID, I would buy them big boxes of chocolate, around the holidays, right? Because it's so important, and that's just my method, but it's so important to make sure that you have a good relationship, because your apprentices are enrolling, right? And so you want to make it as easy as possible, because a lot of our students aren't, they don't know how to navigate a community college application. And so they really need support in that area. And so that's why I think it's really important to build those relationships, because you have so many different models, and I won't talk about that today, of how you can offer apprenticeships at your colleges. And so you really want to make sure students are able to enroll without any hiccups. The next piece I think is important to really establish your outreach and your application process. I think depending on the apprenticeship, I typically work with our faculty, and possibly if you have a classified staff that maybe is a program coordinator or a junior management assistant is what we have to really help with that application process. Again, students are going to need you to kind of walk them through what that looks like, even though you have it on your site. You kind of need some assistance, and you can create your own application process, right? That's totally up to you and how you do that, right? And then there is a reporting piece, right? So that's more of the administrative piece. I talked about those classroom hours. That information is reported to the state chancellor's office. And so I kind of work with our A&R team, and there's a database that you kind of do it. Actually, a new database, which is a lot easier to use than when I first started, which is cool. And then your head of your VP of finance or your vice chancellor of finance is going to sign off on those hours, right? Because there's some funding attached to that. I also work really closely with our faculty. I think I talked about attendance, but that attendance piece is really important, because in a lot of your apprenticeship, what we call standards, like rules and regulations, some apprenticeship programs, you can only have 3 absences. Now, that can all be, you all have the power to kind of figure out, what that means, or how many absences students can have. But for a lot of the programs, especially like the construction trades, they're very strict on that, right? And so if a student is absent, I need to work really closely with the faculty to tell me that they're absent, and then I can then report back to the apprenticeship folks. So that's a really important piece. And I do a lot of coordination, making sure that our apprentices have books and the materials that they need. I think I mentioned some of the partnerships with the city and county of San Francisco. That's a unique and great relationship, but it's, the city is not usually saying, all right, here's your book, right? It kind of takes some coordination, right? And if you're talking about gardening apprenticeship, there are tons of tools and materials that we need to make sure our students have. So I do play a role there. And, again, it just depends on the industry of your apprenticeship program. I think I mentioned the Division of Apprenticeship Standards, which is a state entity, and they're really here to support all apprenticeship programs, right? You want a registered apprenticeship program, meaning the state says, yes, this is an approved apprenticeship program, but you are required to have quarterly meetings with your committees, right? And at those meetings, you can talk about curriculum, you can talk about, if there's a student who maybe is struggling and you may want to put them their apprenticeship on hold, kind of the whole gamut of issues that may come up, but you do want to make sure you have those meetings and have minutes recorded, because when you do get an audit, DAS will ask for that information. And then lastly, and I'm sure this list can go on, but I hope I'm giving you a good sense of what my role is in terms of apprenticeship. I work with a lot of our classified staff to kind of help me with some of these pieces, and also sometimes consultants, right? There's, when you talk about employers, there's some equity issues. Sometimes it's just accessing employers that isn't always easy at the community college level. I know a lot of our faculty interact with employers, and that's great. And it's a whole nother conversation to then say, okay, employer, put me in touch with your HR folks, and let's try to figure out this apprenticeship program. Sometimes it's easier, but in my experience, it takes a lot of work, and you really need to be, you need to have meetings with these employers frequently. And so that takes a big piece of your time. Again, if you have a single employer that is, coming to your college and saying, I want to do this, sometimes that makes it a little easier, but hopefully that just gives you a sense of some of my work with apprenticeship. And then, I think the stakeholder piece is really important. Not only do you kind of, set up all these processes or have these things put in place, but it's really important that your administration and faculty are on board and are aware of your apprenticeship program. A lot of times, apprenticeship is mistaken for an internship, but it's so much more than that. And, what I can think of anything to be a better opportunity for students to be going to school and earning money as they're in school, right? And they're not paying, these however much I pay for college, right, to get this on the job experience and classroom experience. So I think it's really important that folks at the college are involved, and your students, right? Like, make sure that your students know that you're offering these programs. A lot of times, especially on campus, students are very much interested in earning money, right? And you have a lot of flexibility. You can create that flexibility in your program so that it doesn't kind of clash with the timing of their classroom instruction, right? Sometimes a lot of our programs, students are working at night or they have different hours. So that's a huge piece. In your admissions and records office, I think I talked a lot about that because the enrollment piece is really important. In your finance department, you want to make sure that your finance folks know that you have apprentices in these programs. Adele and I have been talking a lot lately. Apprentices are not paying for community college enrollment fees at all. They shouldn't be, right? And so your finance folks need to know that. They need to know, how you've set up your apprenticeship program. So that's a huge piece. That's one that can kind of get a little tricky for me, but that's another topic. And then our Office of Instruction, right? Our scheduling office. We need to make sure that the classes that we're scheduling are being offered, right? The faculty who are involved in our apprenticeship are teaching the classes. There may be questions around loads or however that works. That's a very important piece. Sometimes classes are not offered on campus. So you need to make sure you're communicating with your scheduling office. And then, the Division of Apprenticeship Standards, again, I really try to use them as a resource. And if I have questions, I think I've had a lot of questions with setting up our early childhood apprenticeship because it's very different. I mean, it's amazing and great, and it doesn't fit the same mold that I think a lot of folks are used to. And so a lot of questions come up and they're very helpful. And also when our students complete or graduate from their apprenticeship programs, they get a certificate from the Division of Apprenticeship Standards. And so that's always a win. And then just a couple of our external stakeholders, I think I'm hopefully trying to give you a sense of, internally some of the work that I do and what it will take if you all are interested in starting an apprenticeship program. But the external stakeholder piece is also very important because you cannot have an apprenticeship without these stakeholders, right? It can't just be the community college. It's not an apprenticeship. You really need your employer and sometimes a union partner depending on the industry. So these are just a few that we work with. And then, just best practices. I could go on and on about some of the best practices and I'm still learning a lot about the community college system. But I really think that the communication with external and internal partners is probably one of the most important pieces because if everyone's not in the same room at the same time, it's not good, right? You end up wasting time on explaining things and it's just easier, right? You really need that buy-in. I think it's when the employers kind of reach out to us, that's when it seems like it's a lot easier because then you don't have to sell the employers. But we do have, some of our tech companies, it's kind of hard to sell them when they're already doing the internship at wherever they are, right? Why would they want to do an apprenticeship? So that's really important. I am a big fan of working with large public sector employers. If that could be the model for all apprenticeships, no shade to the private sector, that would be my preferred model. Why? Because one, the kind of public sector employers can hire a lot more than just one, right? So we've had a lot of experience with our private sector employers and they're hiring ones and twos and you have to wait, right? Versus if I'm working with the city and county of San Francisco, they may be able to take 20 apprentices at one time, right? And that makes everything a lot easier. Students are kind of in this cohort model together, even though you don't have to do a cohort model. But that would be my preference if I had to tell you what an ideal apprenticeship program would look like. And then I just love partnering with our community-based organizations and providing students with wraparound support. They need it, right? Hey, students are in different places, have different experiences, come from all different walks of life. And it has been my experience that if we truly, if it is our intent to serve, all students and be inclusive, we have to be prepared to provide students with the support they need. And that doesn't always, I don't think the community college system always can provide everything. We can't do it all. And in my experience and in San Francisco, we partner with some amazing community-based organizations. They've, provided support for transportation, childcare. I mean, the list goes on. And so I truly think that's the biggest component that's often missing from a lot of apprenticeship programs, and should be always kind of at the forefront if you can do it, because you obviously have to have the funding to support. And then outreach. You know, I think the outreach piece is also very important in making sure that, you know, you're reaching students by either using social media. You know, we did a Facebook, we had a platform on Facebook, and we got a lot of responses, right? You know, and it's great to go into classrooms. You know, we would present in our classrooms and talk to our students who are already taking some of our classes within that department. But social media is definitely the way to go. And then, you know, providing some of those in-person information sessions. I know where, you know, COVID totally got it, but that really was, that made a big difference, right? For students to actually see someone in that occupation and hear about their experience, right? And you know, in this example that I'm thinking of, it was for our automotive pre-apprenticeship program. And so we had women mechanics, amazing women mechanics talking to our students. And so you could just see the look on the students' faces, like they could totally see themselves as a mechanic. And to me, that really helped with our outreach. And then I think, you know, make sure that you're being inclusive, right? Like, you know, I think we all throw around how diverse, you know, we want to be inclusive, but you really have to put in the effort to do that, right? And again, and it's reaching students where they are, you know, not just saying, oh, I posted it on my website. You kind of have to take an extra step and do that. And so, you know, one of our programs, we had really focused on having a program that had 60% women. And we did, and we were able to do that. And it was because of our outreach efforts. So again, these are just kind of the ones that come to mind. Again, I could talk all day about this, but I'm gonna leave my contact info up. I'm sure Kathy will share this, and I'll stop sharing for questions.
Thank you. Thank you to Monique. Thank you to Adele. We have built in a few moments for questions before we resume our agenda. So if you would like to just unmute and ask a question. And I have a question, Monique, too, just for you. You know, I know we're at the same college, but there's a few things I don't know about what I see online. So when I go to the the Apprenticeship Standards website and I look at our county, I see lots of apprenticeships, more than what you mentioned, like fire academies and electrical. And I know some of those students take classes at City College, but they're not sponsored by us. Is that why you didn't put them on your list?
Yeah, we're not the program sponsor. Yeah, so, or not the LEA, sorry. So, you know, you have to have a letter for any community college has to have a letter saying, you know, we agree to be the lead education agency. And so, yeah, if we're not the LEA, then no, they're not on my list.
But some of them take classes with us.
Yeah, I mean, they can take as whatever they want. And that's the other beauty about apprenticeship is, you know, in terms of, you know, being in East Bay or, you know, students can come from anywhere. They don't have to be San Francisco residents. And that's great.
Right. And so I just mentioned that because a model that we might be looking at later, I mean, this is a nuts and bolts discussion, but if you can all think about this, would be an apprenticeship that allows students to take courses at any of our colleges, and even in the case of some of our K-12s, any dual enrollment course, but may be hosted, you know, at one particular institution, but would allow for students to take the courses anywhere. And that might be a great model to kind of look at for some of our, especially our future workforce members that could live in one county, work in another county, go to school in a third county. And we know we have those because I've seen those transcripts where they've gone to 4 of our colleges or start in dual enrollment and move around a lot. So that's another discussion. But Adele, I mean, I think in our sector that might work really well to have some movement allowed. So if anyone wants to unmute and ask a question of Monique and Adele, we have about 9 minutes.
Before that, Adele, did you just want to add, because I know that there are some nuances with,
Yeah.
you know, if you have an apprenticeship, let's say at City College, you know, students can take classes and then, let's say at Solano, and if it's the required classes that you've already set up for your apprenticeship, you work with the faculty, you know, you can totally say, yes, we'll give you credit. But Adele, I think if I heard Kathy right, I haven't seen a model yet where you have students kind of taking apprenticeship courses at Laney and Merritt. Like maybe that's not a good example, but that hasn't, I know there's been a lot of discussions about that, but I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful vision that you put forth, Kathleen, and I couldn't agree more with the sentiment. And just to be like realistic about where apprenticeship is at today, like in order for there to be the proper like reporting and accountability for an apprenticeship, you have to set up an apprenticeship with like a set of courses, and then the college that agrees to offer those courses and agrees to be a like the LEA, because there can be multiple LEAs, right? Like it's not just one, right? So there's certainly precedent for like a single, for example, ECEPS is a single apprenticeship intermediary that works with multiple different colleges. Like, so there's definitely lots of precedent for that to happen. But like once somebody enrolls to, you know, gets the apprenticeship at, let's say, Berkeley City College, like they need to do those classes and complete that track with Berkeley City College. They can't just be like, oh, well, I moved to San Francisco, so now I'm going to do the courses I need to take at CCSF. Like that's not a quick thing. So I agree with the sentiment, but the reality of apprenticeship is that there's like accountability and reporting associated with it that makes it so that that vision is not yet achievable. Not that we shouldn't shoot for it, but just
not yet. Our field's a good one to practice with though, because we have CAP-aligned courses and they're all they're all equivalent courses throughout the state. So it would be a nice one to kind of be innovative around. So any other questions? Do we have anyone with a question?
I have a question. As a community college, we are looking at being the LEA. I've been slowly digging into this for a very long time, and we're really close to trying to put something together. And we have employers starting to come to us to talk to us about it in our community. And there's lots of different employers. So my question was kind of how you blend the needs of all the different employers. For instance, I've had Cap Sonoma come in and say, this is what we want. We have this many people. We want them to do this. And then, you know, you might have another employer saying they want something specific. And what's the best way to kind of blend all of that? Also, we have 40 school districts in Sonoma County. So it's really like, is it 40 MOUs with like, it's like I'm when you were saying work with the school districts, I was like, ah.
So I would go about this, and there's two ways to go about it. One way to go about it is to really borrow the traditional apprenticeship model, which is to create a what's called a joint apprenticeship training committee, right? Which is you say to all of these employers, all right, folks, let's all come to the table and let's decide the occupations that are consistent between your organizations. And we're all going to agree that this is the work process for this occupation and this is the learning plan for this occupation. And we'll like sort of launch the program together and I think that makes a lot of sense. Like if you've got, you know, at one high school, they want like 2 after-school people, and at another high school, they want 3 after-school people. Like if it's the same role, but just at multiple different employers, I think it really makes sense to try to bring everybody to the table. However, if it is like very different occupations and like 1 or 2 employers have like, you know, 10, 20 apprentices that they want to employ, you can set it up to be multiple different apprenticeships. And like, that's totally possible. And what also sometimes happens, and I think Randy would be able to advise you on this also, is like you can set up a single occupation and then have multiple, what's called like employer, I forget the name. It's like an employer agreement, essentially, employer subscription agreement or something like that. What is it, Monique?
The employer subscription.
Okay, so there can be like multiple employer subscription agreements that kind of have a little bit of variation to them. So like the pay might be a little bit different, like you might agree on the same floor of the pay, but one employer might be paying a little bit more at each step and another employer is paying a little bit less. Or, you know, one employer might want to like add a class that's really important to them, whereas another employer is like, yeah, I just don't think that's important. So again, you might like design your standard to have like the floor of classes, so to speak, like the minimum set of classes that meet the 144 hours, but then like a particular employer might say, well, I would really like them to also take this class. So you could set it up like there is variation in how there is still ability for some variation when you set up that joint apprenticeship training committee where you're trying to like bring multiple players to the table. They don't have to agree on like 100% of things. They do need to agree on like the floor of the wages and the core set of classes required, but there can be some variability within that.
And then just real quickly, that doesn't have to be, we have the our advisory board committee for our career education. Is that the same or would that be different, right?
No, this is a specific committee that
Okay.
you'd be setting up like for the apprenticeship. And it's actually like when you file the occupation with the Division of Apprenticeship.
It's another advisory board
say, like,
specifically for that.
Who's on this committee? Yeah, exactly. No,
All right.
there might be plenty of overlap with who your advisory board is, right? But it's specifically for the apprenticeship.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. That was a very, very helpful.
And Melissa, I think also in your situation, you also may want to look at where the greatest needs are. For us, we found that they were at the entry level, like kind of the start of the pipeline, because that's where all the hiring was happening. Our relationship with the school district indicated that there were 40 job openings at the start of every single year for paraprofessional teacher aides.
Wow.
So it's like 40. Okay, well, we'll be lucky to be able to fill that. But and those were entry level. And I think for all of us in our sector, we have seen, you know, retirements this year. We've seen lots of trauma and drama in our fields. So it would make sense to beef up the entry level pipeline and just look at how do you get people started? How do you help these younger people, especially, get in the system, get their feet wet, get jobs with children and start with their experience. So
yeah, that's what we're looking at. And they came to us and asked us for a bilingual one specifically, and that they wanted it bilingual as well. So
oh, great.
Looking at the bilingual.
Yeah, great.
Okay, Kathleen, I have a question. This is Lori. For the City College of San Francisco, their instructional aid, is that for special education? Is that for para educators?
Yeah, so ours is, it's it's a funny little hybrid. The students are going to get their permits because we have an early ed area in the school district, early ed hires. But the para group in our advisory committee wanted SPED expertise because that's why they felt there was a lot of turnover. They had more jobs in SPED than early ed, and they want to be able to move people from early ed to SPED if they're interested and back and forth. Also, one thing we'll talk about later, but I'll emphasize this now, is it really looks like the governor's plan for TK expansion is going to move forward. All the indications are that there's going to be a grade 13 in our public schools. Everything I've read is the money's going to be set aside for that. And so when you're looking at TK and you're looking at TK expansion, you need SPED paras in there because those are now district kids. If they've been identified, they're going to need access to additional special ed qualified teacher assistants. So everything's kind of pointing to this tremendous need for entry level, both TK, so preschool certified folks, permit holders who can then get credentials, and special ed expertise, especially with younger children. So I'm.
So you called it early education instructional aid instead of early intervention.
Yeah.
What was the thought there?
Because some of them, they're going to take the SPED. Our feeling was SPED courses would help anyone working at a school district program, anybody. So we didn't want to just say it was early intervention. We wanted all of our entry-level students to have some SPED coursework, because they're all going to be interacting with SPED children, whether they're identified or not, especially if they go into early ed and TK. And now with COVID, we know that, at least in San Francisco, the identification process is backlogged. I think Karen's on here from the district. But there's a backlog of IEP, requests, and people, hi Karen, if you want to fill in anything. But we know teachers haven't really looked at children in a year. So how would they know if they should refer them for identification yet? But there was a backlog before COVID. So I can, I live in San Francisco. I know a lot of folks in the district. I'm pretty sure the backlog's real. And so as students get identified, they have services that are mandated. Who's going to provide these services? Has to be an early ed expert with some SPED expertise. So I don't know, Karen, if you want to add anything from district perspective.
No, I don't have anything specific to add other than there's a huge need. So that's why this program is exciting.
Yeah, thank you. And our program is, we're really focusing on dual enrollment. So we really want young people who have been in the district to come back and be apprentices. So Grow Your Own was really a focus. Like, you just graduated, you've got some dual enrollment units, stay, help your own school. So yeah, thanks, Lori. Any other questions? Nope. Just unmute if you have a question. Comments, reactions?
I just want to say, Nadia, you put in the chat, you like the idea of a youth apprenticeship. I totally agree with you. And the Berkeley program, the Berkeley City College program, is actually designed as a youth apprenticeship program. So they were I think you noticed there was like a high school in that list of partners, and that high school, it was about sourcing apprentices from that high school and actually having them start in as they're finishing high school. So I think there's a huge opportunity for youth apprenticeship development in this space.
And I think we have some K-12, other K-12 reps or county offices of ed or partners on the call. If any of you have any comments or questions about the youth pipeline or what your visions are. No? Okay. Okay. So let's move on. We're going to have another little discussion here, an opportunity for a little bit of a discussion. So thank you for the nuts and bolts presentation. Thank you for all the great comments and observations. And we wanted to share with you so I had mentioned that I'll go back and I have a slide around possible state funds, federal funds. Money's just flowing. People are throwing money at our sector. Unfortunately, not for workforce though. A lot of the money is going to services, childcare, children, classrooms, facilities, but not necessarily workforce development, which is somewhat unfortunate. So one of the first opportunities is a high road training partnership opportunity. I'd like maybe Adele to talk about it a little bit, and we need to really decide whether our sector is appropriate for this fund source. And we've been told that in August, as I think Monique and Adele said, apprenticeship grant will be coming out. We think in August. There is some feeling that the high road training partnership model will be a fast track to a CAI grant. But Adele, maybe you want to give more information. I have the link in here, and we have a little bit of time to just talk about whether this is going to be appropriate for our sector, whether as a region we have a lead that would like to apply, whether we want to keep talking about this. So Adele, I'll give it to you a moment.
And do you want to just click on that link so that folks can see the, maybe, we'll see.
Yeah, I don't know if it's live.
Okay.
I can do another, I can get it in another way.
Okay, so the High Road Training Partnership grant so it was released on June 16th, I think. So we're just a week into it being released. And it was released specifically by the California Apprenticeship Initiative. And what it is it's a planning grant of around, I think it's $100,000 to $125,000 of a planning grant. And the intent of it is that it's for folks to, it's specifically for colleges to join an existing high road training partnership. Kathleen, do you mind if I screen share?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Let me see.
Okay. Can you see?
Yep.
This? Yes. Okay. So this is my little summary here. So it's what, and this is a direct quote from the RFA, which is that it's the intent of the funds is to strengthen and advance existing HRTPs and to begin planning for the second phase of the RFA, which would provide funds for implementation of new and innovative apprenticeships and pre-apprenticeship programs. So if you, let's see here. So High Road Training Partnerships, for those who don't know, it is overseen by the California Workforce Development Board. And essentially what they are is partnerships led by industry, often bringing a labor organization to the table. And if you click through on the link from these slides, which will, this is the same thing that Kathleen was showing. It takes you to the actual RFA, and you'll see in the RFA that it is, some of the specifications for it. But one of the specifications is that, oh, lovely, it's not loading, is that you have to be part of an existing high road training partnership. And that links to, sorry, okay, so here's the summary, right? I don't want to scroll on you. It's horrible to watch somebody else scrolling. But anyways, it links to this, which shows you all of the existing high road training partnerships. And you'll notice, sadly, not a single one of these is the high road to education or the high road to early care and education. So there is no existing high road training partnership around our sector. So unfortunately, and we can discuss this further, but my summary from reading this RFA is that this group is not eligible for it because there isn't an existing high road training partnership that includes us, which is frustrating because, yeah, that's obviously frustrating for a lot of reasons. However, I think there is an interesting conversation to be had as to whether we should be creating a high road training partnership in the Bay Area education space. That a lot of us could bring different employers to that conversation, could bring different unions to that conversation, and certainly colleges. One thing that you'll notice when you look at this list, and you can sort of click through on any individual one of these, it shows who the partners are. And there's almost never a community college that's listed in those partnerships. And I think and there's also not very often, sometimes there is, but not very often, apprenticeship mentioned. So really this grant that the Chancellor's Office just released is really about trying to get more community colleges into these existing partnerships, and B, to get some of these partnerships oriented towards apprenticeship. So that's what they're trying to do with this RFA. It means that if you weren't already at this party, you're essentially locked out of this RFA, which for this group, I think, unfortunately, is the case. But I've been talking to lots of folks to just try to understand this space better. And this whole concept of high road training partnerships, it is an investment philosophy of the state of California. So we can expect that there will be future funding opportunities around high road training partnerships. And therefore, I think we are probably well served to be investing some time in building a high road training partnership, even though we won't be building it in time for this grant opportunity because it's due by August 16th. So that's my little
Great.
summary. I
Thank
don't
you,
know.
Adele. Thanks for having the slide ready. If I could share this one slide I wanted to show. So I agree that it's set up to favor more traditional apprenticeship partnerships and partnerships that lead to apprenticeship. I agree that, you know, that's what the list looks like. But going back to our slide from last week, where we see that 6.7% of registered apprentices in California are women, and we can change those numbers significantly if our sector is included, I think that it's a strong argument to either develop an HRTP now or argue with the state about why we're not eligible for this funding cycle. I just want to show you, BACCC, Rock sent me this link today. And I just want to show you one of, Randy Wolf, who presented last week from ECEPS, said that there were concerns that, there were wage issues in our sector. And so this is a we know our workforce should be paid more. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. But when you look at all of the sectors, this is a list of all of the sectors in our region, in the San Francisco Bay region, with not only the numbers of students listed, but the numbers who meet SWP guidelines around wage attainment. You see child development and education ranking way up here. This is what we're number 6 in terms of numbers of students. And yes, we have quite a few students in this orange area which do not meet the wage requirements, but look how many we have in the blue that do, and look where we fall. Lots of sectors have students who get jobs that do not quite meet living wage and expected wages when they leave. We also have to look at who our workforce is, primarily women. 67% of our workforce are women of color, and heavy financial aid recipients, first in their family to go to college. I mean, we check all the boxes when it comes to equity. So, and our numbers are there. This is just the Bay region. In the state, we're number 5 in terms of numbers of students enrolled. I do think we have to kind of look at this. Sometimes it's like, oh, well, the wages aren't, what they might be in another sector. And that's been an argument for keeping us out. But I think we have to kind of look at this differently and look at the wages that people earned before they took courses in our area, and look at what some of the job possibilities are. Also, when we're tied to K-12 instruction and we're tied to other possibilities in our pipeline, the wages do change. So Adele, let's keep looking at that. Maybe just get the pulse of this group. Is there any, excitement or interest in trying to either apply for this? I think this is a real fast timeline. I do think that an August 16th due date for community college is tough. For any teachers is tough. But maybe the strategy of developing our own HRTP outside of this, using this RJV as a way to get our ducks in a row for the next round of funding is a good strategy. And so do we have any agreement, you can do thumbs up, you can do any college just dying to write an HRTP grant proposal before August, because we could have a subgroup looking into this and working on it. We could also get ready for the next one. And hi, Aaliyah. I see you here, Aaliyah, who's working on developing an after-school apprenticeship. Because we know a lot of our students go into school-based before and after-school care. So maybe your thoughts on this as well. It's another segment of employment. All the Excel and ACES and 21st century, all those funding sources, I think all had pretty substantial increases in funding in the year's budget.
Yeah, absolutely. So as any program in ECE or EDU should really consider after school programs and school districts as well as community-based organizations as potential employers that will need workers. So there's a real opportunity there. And I wanted to just say, in response to the HRTP kind of work, it sounds like we wouldn't even be able to apply, but I think the strategy of, as we're developing kind of programs and various programs in our fields, that we tap into some HRTP folks, and maybe that's Adele, that can give guidance, right, to say, how can we strengthen our apprenticeship program standards and or grants to align ourselves with requirements, for lack of better terms, of
for the next round.
Yeah. So that so that I'd be curious, what the appetite is of this group to maybe develop some, I don't want to say the big A advocacy strategies, but advocacy strategies, so that we're getting in front of the labor department and having the conversations and connecting for those leaders, how our work and this work and these occupations need to be addressed. So so that there's a bit of simultaneous kind of design and readying ourselves, but also at the same time, little A advocacy and education that we can do as a group.
Yeah, great point. I'm happy in the time we have to lead this RJV, and I'll put together something like a white paper and we'll send it out to everyone in this group around. I think that's a great suggestion. I do see in the chat maybe some real, feelings about not this time, but getting ready for next time. If we had some real eagerness around applying for this, I think maybe we could fight, but I agree, Adele, it seems like it's just not for us right now. But I'm happy to put together a white paper to advocate for us being included in the next round, and for maybe to do some work around some of the elements of an HRTP being put in place over this next year. I think that's very strategic, and I think that's smart.
I think also that sorry, Kathleen, I was just going to say that I think the timing for that is quite good. I was just saw a commercial for Newsom trying to maintain himself as governor, and he was touting the free preschool for every child, and it's like you can't use us for a talking point if you're not also going to fund what we need.
And we need teachers. That's the bottom line. We need staff. So, okay. I think you all have good input. If there was someone really eager, I'd be willing to go a different direction. But I think hearing all that, I'll draft some kind of white paper, position paper, to do the little A. And then we can have some elements of, Adele, maybe you'd be willing to, maybe we can meet with another HRTP, like the person you had at your last meeting, to kind of talk about what some of those elements are and get us ready.
Yeah, absolutely. So Peter Simon is the person who was at the last apprenticeship, like sort of the Bay Area College Connection apprenticeship meeting. And I'm sure he'd be happy to advise us. And I'll just say, from what I have learned, in conversation with him and others, is these HRTPs, the intent is that they are industry led and that community colleges play the support role. So I would say, like, as we think about sort of creating this partnership, we should think about it as like employer led. So as much as all of us, can bring employers to the table, and also unions, like the unions that are in this space, like bringing them to the table, that's really going to be the key component to get this going.
Great.
I would also think, hi, Yvonne from Chabot, would we want to also include the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing in the conversation? Just because it seems like whatever, placements we put or apprenticeships we put into K-12 schools, that we'd have to have some sort of emergency credential sign off or something, right, that would allow somebody to be an apprentice at a school. So I think having them kind of, I don't know what the rules are around that. So I think it might be a question that might come up.
Yeah, well, and they administer the child development permit too. So, and that's changing, everything's changing right now. So we're just in a field of change. So CTC would be a good partner.
Yeah.
Okay, well, those are good marching orders. I'll try to summarize what I've just heard and what I agree to, and that would be great. I think, Adele, we will focus then a meeting on elements of HRTP, and it would be great to include some of our employer partners for our programs that we have right now, as well as many of you have other relationships with employers. You have them on your CT advisory committees. You already staff their programs. They go to you for job fairs, and they're, part of developing what the requirements are. So we have employers that rely on us and that we have good relationships with. So that's a good next step. Okay, thank you. Any other comments? We have about 6 more minutes. I just want to go through the last of the slides and then send you on your way. Any other comments before we move forward? Okay, quick save the dates here. We will have a deeper dive into models, as Adele had mentioned, and launching a meeting. I did put on here HRTP funding, so we can kind of launch this getting ready for HRTP. There will be a CAI grant coming out in August. As soon as we see what the parameters are for that grant and see the focus areas, we will be gathering folks who are interested in applying and doing some technical support for all of you. So at least we're learning together. We've already got the virtual practitioner statewide TPP, Teacher Preparation Pipeline Conference, is set August 18th and August 20th. So 2 days in August. I have already emailed a few of you. We're going to be doing an apprenticeship workshop for the San Francisco Bay region. And it's a free conference. Everyone on this call is invited. Lots of ECE and EDU workshops and lots of workforce information, as well as last year we had Tony Thurman, we had Linda Darling Hammond, we had Eloy from the State Chancellor's Office. So this year the focus is also getting leaders from our systems to speak and do keynotes and talk about the governor's budget, as well as some federal funding coming out. So save the date. The registration's out. My Register Now link is live. So when I send this PowerPoint to you, you'll have it. You can actually register now. And again, I've already done some outreach for a workshop. We're going to also redo Teach for the Bay. It was very popular last year. So put August 6th through 8th down, save the date, do a workshop. Ideally, we'll have some apprenticeship workshops in there, as well as some standard ECE, permit, become a teacher, after school, workshops. We had 2,700 students last year. I have no reason to imagine that it's going to be less this year. So, and it'll be free again. So save the date. And then I also have a live link to the Women's Bureau. They're doing national online discussions around women in the workforce. And that includes women's role in caregiving, school being virtual, lack of childcare. And so a lot of the things that we're dealing with our students and perhaps with ourselves will be focus areas in these online discussions. So there's a live link there. Just a recap, I just want to make a couple of announcements around the state plan. I did say that I saw kind of a last week's update on the TK expansion. It looks like it's going to roll out grade 13 in the next 4 years. And there's a whole financing plan. A lot of what we have talked about, though, is still to be worked out around who provides the after school care for TK, who is actually going to staff it. There's a great model, I believe, in Long Beach where there's a credentialed elementary teacher paired with an early childhood permit holder in a classroom. Part of the governor's budget is to provide funding for an additional person. So it's not just one teacher, but an additional teacher. So maybe that's the model they're looking at. But lots to be discussed. The impact on existing childcare programs is significant. So a lot to discuss around rolling this out, and no real decisions yet. I did also hear, though, I wanted to tell all of you on this call that yesterday, Linda Olivenbaum and I were emailing, and it looks like the California Early Childhood Mentor Program has had a bit of a reprieve. It's going to be moved to DSS, HDSS, and is getting a contract through 2022. So that's really good news. That was something that we were all the faculty in the community colleges were just, don't get rid of the mentor program when we're trying to train students and we don't have anywhere to send them. So it looks like it's got a bit of a reprieve, more to be followed, more details to follow. It just happened 2 weeks ago, so it's pretty fresh information. Just keep reading about the state budget and childcare expansion, the CDE DSS split, and all the money coming out for new slots and a rate increase and new after school. And every time that happens, I keep thinking, who is going to work there? Who is going to staff these classrooms? Because as you know, Target and Starbucks can't find people. So we're there. I've never seen more signs. And I'm in San Francisco. So of course, you know, we're at the serious end of this staff shortage, but signs everywhere, help wanted everywhere. And then federal budget, just a request that you all look at the 2022 budget and look at what our president has proposed in the American Jobs Plan, not just for this year, but for next year. 1 to 2 million new registered apprentices, $8 billion, pre-apprentices, $2 billion, tuition-free community college, and $4 billion in childcare investments. It would be the largest childcare relief plan since World War II. Again, workforce. So we're almost at time. And thank you so much for spending your summer afternoon with us. This will be recorded if you know anyone that wanted to come, but they weren't able to. And if we have any last comments before we go, and thank you all for your thoughtful chat comments. Those are great. Thank you again to Adele and Monique and all of our presenters and our commenters. And any last comments?
Nadia, I just had a question about where you think is the best place to kind of keep up to date around the state budget and some of those details. Do you have a particular place you'd like to go?
I've got different sources that I go to. I'll try to send anything stunning out in our emails, but I think the CTA has been putting out some good information. And then HDSS and CDE have also in their press releases and their releases, they're doing debriefs on budget. I get some information though from lobbyists who are in the halls and they're hearing things. So if you know of a lobbyist at your own district, you might hear more. Just put a bug in their ear to listen for early childhood and TK and teacher preparation expansion, because sometimes they don't focus on that. Everything's up in the air right now though, so.
Yeah, that's what I figured. I also just wanted to say it's not ECE specific, but there is money coming in the budget, or at least being fought for in the budget, for more faculty as well, and support for part-time faculty. So that could potentially also be helpful on the college side.
Absolutely, Nadia. And when you see, if our president says free community college for everybody, we're all going to be fighting each other for more faculty, because that's going to really impact not just California, but other states where community college is more expensive, free. So yeah, that'll I think change the landscape. Thank you. And Aaliyah put in California Budget Policy Center and EdSource. Yeah, and they send out email information. So great resources.
Kathleen,
yeah.
Kathleen, I have a question about the latest in the budget. Do you know if they kept the provision about getting rid of the qualifying exams for teacher pathways, the CBEST and the CSET?
I have just seen arguments for making that permanent. I haven't seen a final decision.
Okay.
I know right now the tests are paused, but you know, if you follow, there's also lots of arguments about the SAT and the ACT for high school students, and a lot of our universities are getting rid of it. So it's kind of like, well, if you're doing that for high school students, what about teachers? They're teachers. Haven't seen a final decision, but I wouldn't be surprised if the pause was lengthened.
Okay, that would be great.
Yeah, it really helps our disproportionately impacted students. I have so many with just test anxiety who are amazing teachers, who also can't afford to keep taking the tests. I know Tony Thurman co-sponsored a bill. I'm blanking on it if one of you knows, but it's actually designed to get more teachers of color into classrooms, specifically African-American teachers, specifically males. He came out and said, as superintendent, he wants more teachers to look like him and more teachers to be able to teach young Black males, because they were young Black males. So it was a very passionate statement from our superintendent of schools. The bill was, it has passed. So I would absolutely look at equity issues around the teaching workforce and look at how they're going to enact that. It's a fairly new piece of legislation. I just hope that community colleges and K-12 dual enrollment pathways are included, because as you all know, everyone on this call probably knows, by the time you get to your senior year in college, it's really too late to start, recruiting a diverse, you're either diverse or you aren't, and you're either in the pipeline or you aren't. It's when you're younger that you need to really make those good decisions. So I was excited about the bill. I just hope that it reaches down young enough so that we're really getting to kids when they're making their career, kind of exploring careers. So, and then on the same token, under the community college, an article I just read from our latest community college weekly news, numbers of students of color have really dropped off in our whole system across the country. And you probably know that individually, but the very students we're really trying to support have disappeared due to COVID. So we've got a lot of challenges. But thank you, Alice, for bringing that up. Okay, we're at time. I want to be respectful of your time. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for being here. And our next meetings, you will get your, AB 520. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, I see. Alea, you said amended from recruitment and retention to only retention. Okay.
Or development maybe
Yeah.
was what they amended it to.
Yeah. Well, we've got such a problem right now that I think that's a group that we're all focused on. Disproportionately impacted students is a group we're all focused on trying to get through our systems.
Yeah.
So, okay. Thank you so much for being with us. Look for the emails and you'll hear about our next meetings. Again, thanks Adele and Monique.
Everyone, thanks
Thank
Kathleen.
you.